Welcome to the Industrial Control System Information Sharing and Analysis Center's monthly public briefing. My name is Debbie Wendell, and I will be moderating today's session. I serve as Community Director for the Center and oversee the Center's human-to-human information dissemination mechanisms. Today's briefing, How Do We Indicate Expertise? The Global Industrial Cybersecurity Professional, or GICSP certification, features a panel of distinguished subject matter experts, including Graham Speake, Vice President at NexDefense, Derek Harp, Business Operations Lead at SANS, and Tim Conway, Technical Director of ICS and SCADA programs at SANS. ICS ISAC Chair Chris Blask will be facilitating today's discussion. During today's presentation, Chris will take the first few minutes to lay out some background information to frame the issue. Then, each panelist will be introduced and have the opportunity to present their opening remarks. Next, the panel will spend about 35 to 40 minutes for their discussion. And finally, there will be time for questions and answers and open discussion at the end of the presentation. At any point during the call, if you would like to ask a question, you may use the hand raise feature or type your question into the chat box in the GoToWebinar application. When speaking, if you'd please introduce yourself and indicate your industry affiliation. After the meeting, a recording of this session will be available on the Center's website. So now, without any further delay, Chris, over to you for your background presentation.
Thank you, Debbie. Thanks to our panelists, all the people who are physically here at the moment, and all you people out in the future. Welcome from the past, and thanks for dropping in. So, as Debbie said, we've got a couple folks with us today who know an awful lot about all this stuff. As Debbie reads their bios in the back, you find out they've been many other hats as well. So we've come to this particular conversation with an interesting perspective on all these issues. So, of course, for those of you familiar with the ISAC, this is who we are. We have a mission to forward knowledge sharing, these human-to-human things in this workforce development issue that we're talking about today, as well as the automation of all these things. And I won't go on any more about that. But let's talk about where we are in this workforce development space. We have this enormous gap in knowledge, and those of us who've been concerned about this for any number of years are painfully aware of it. We have a very large embedded workforce that knows an awful lot about the physical aspects, how you handle the pressures and temperatures, chemical mixtures and voltages, and keep all this infrastructure running to the level of stability and safety and reliability we're used to. That exists out there in spades. Really, really good folks. And we've developed over the last couple of decades quite a lot of folks who know an awful lot about information security. They know how to keep your finance systems running and so forth, and the continued existence of the internet, the fact that these systems function, with the blips notwithstanding, speaks to the fact that we've done a really good job of building a workforce to understand these two things. For lots of fascinating reasons, we really have a hard time joining them together. And on other conversations, we can get into the sociology of that and so forth. But it just is what it is. Very different worlds. In the IT space, we were very fast and exciting, and we developed new things and deploy them, on Wednesday. In the industrial space, you very carefully build large infrastructures. And as we've learned from thousands of years of industry, nobody notices the levees until they break, and then the survivors come and hunt you down and burn your house. So just very different cultural modes, different sets of knowledge sets. We have to bring them together. We're in a time frame where we don't have forever, to get these people talking to each other. And we have to do this in this environment where threats are moving quickly, so that's an issue, and we have an enormous scale. We have hundreds of anything, oil refineries, offshore rigs, large infrastructure projects, thousands and tens of thousands of everything else. Everything from gas stations, manufacturing, farms, oil wells, the list goes on and on and on. So if we're going to address in anything like the time frame we have available to us, the scale of the issue we have to face, how are we going to do that? So the GICSP that we're here to talk about today has been developed in relatively record time among people with a great deal of expertise on both sides. And it provides an opportunity for industry operators and for their partners working with them to identify some level of validation. That here is someone who's qualified to at least guide the conversation. To bring together those two sides. the InfoSec cyber expertise and the industrial expertise, look at the challenges faced by the individual organizations, how they address them, and how they deal with dealing with incidents and so forth. So without any further ado on my part, Debbie, if you'd like to intro our panelists, we can do that round table and start the open conversation.
Derek Harp is the Business Operations Lead for ICS programs at SANS, as well as a co-founder and board member of NexDefense, a company focused on the security technology needs of ICS asset owners. Prior to that, he was the CEO and co-founder of LogicKeep, where he was the co-inventor of IntelliShield, a pioneer IT security product, which was subsequently acquired. As a former U.S. Navy officer, Derek has experience in combat information management, communications security, and intelligence. Chris, back to you.
So Derek, if you'd like to start us off with a couple minutes of your thoughts for how we got here and how perhaps this particular certification helps move the ball forward, the floor is all yours.
Sure. I'll keep it brief and see where this where the Q&A goes. I think the foundational element here was a widespread issue that a lot of people have been talking about for some time, and this really kicked off. The GICSP became officially kicked off, I guess, in at the Security Summit in 2013. So essentially February, about a year and a half ago, and there were probably 30 or so of us in the room, and it was a great mix of vendors and end users, and and intermediaries in the in the marketplace, including SANS. But it was really an industry communication and an industry discussion. What do we do to get some baseline level of measurement? How do we know? And there were a couple of key end user companies saying we have to have this. In fact, it's part of our plan now, and they shared their internal thoughts on what they needed. So we need to know who knows even the basics. We have no way to measure that today, and this was born out of that, and it was done. Many of were members that were in that initial meeting, and then people that have been subsequently added. And again, it was a wide mix of individuals representing all the different kinds of constituencies on that steering committee, who met pretty much almost every week, and certainly every other week, the bulk of them most of last year, in order to pull this off. And then nominating members of that steering committee and others, nominating additional subject matter experts, a separate group to serve as the body of individuals beginning to write this, write the questions that many of which ended up in the exam, and that was also a very carefully designed multidisciplinary group with good representation from IT and OT, and there's a lot of work going into making sure that all the angles were as covered as best as they can. And the only thing that I would add today is there are now 150 certified individuals. It's on the GIAC website. You can go and look and see by name who those are, and there's quite a few people that have purchased it, along with taking various courses and things, and haven't not yet sat for the exam. So it really looks like there's a increasing every week now, increasing number of people that are looking to this, and companies that are looking to have folks in their organization hold this, and so that's kind of its origins, and it looks like it's going. There will be a revision. It isn't a set in stone sort of thing. If you know how GIAC works, they do a very good job of taking input, which they're doing right now, and looking at very hardcore statistics and data to make some data-driven decisions on various behaviors of the certification, and continue to make sure it stays as relevant and balanced as possible as time goes on.
Awesome. Thank you very much. So Debbie, if you'd like to introduce Mr. Conway for his first foray, please, the floor is yours.
As Technical Director for ICS and SCADA programs at SANS, Tim Conway is responsible for technical component development, review, and implementation within the SANS ICS and SCADA product offerings. He is current chair of the NERC-CIP Interpretation Drafting Team, a member of the NESCO Advisory Board, current chair of the NERC-CIP-C GridX Working Group, and chair of the NBISE, or National Board of Information Security Examiners, Smart Grid Cybersecurity Panel. Chris, back to you.
Thank you very much, Debbie. So Derek, if you'd like to mirror or contradict everything Derek just said, the floor is yours for a few minutes, and have at it.
The only thing I would like to add is Derek said the certifications are growing every week. They're growing every second. We're currently at 155 certified individuals on the site. And when we did a similar presentation at the ICS JWG, at the time, I don't have the current number, but at the time there was 130 or 135 in pipeline registered to take. So as those people that are registered to take actually take the exam, the website is updated every day. And Chris, I can send you that email or the URL via chat, just so you can share it and people can know where to go to look. From my perspective, it seems like I've been involved in this conversation regarding education, training, credentialing, knowledge, skill, and ability throughout my entire career. When I came into the power sector, I worked in control center operations for my entire career. And one of the early debates that was occurring back then in the 90s was the system operator training requirements. Early in the 90s, operators would come from field environments, whether they were working in generating facilities or in substation environments or tech service, and they would ultimately, many of them, graduate and take jobs within the control center operation for generation supervisor or a transmission system supervisor. And as those jobs changed and as the ability for what those operators could do in the electric system continued to grow as the technology grew, there were a lot of conversations started to occur mid-90s in regards to some level of credentialing program for those system operators. So from starting in 94 around about when the conversations began, action plans in place in 97, training classes coming to light in 98, initial exam development later in 98, and then ultimately the proposal for continuing education in 2000 and a regulation in 2005. You look at that total time span of 94 to 2005 from conversation start to actual implementation where operators were required to be certified and maintain continuing ed. For the same reasons, we were having parallel conversations that if the operators are certified, everything that they do within a control center relies on the tools and technology that are supported by this group of professionals, and that group of professionals doesn't have a certification requirement. So the same conversations have been occurring in this space in regards to the knowledge, skill, and ability of industrial cybersecurity professionals and what those core components should contain. And outside of the electric sector, it's been occurring through oil and natural gas, very similar conversations. So the GICSP was an effort to kind of pull together the foundational components that people would need to know and understand in order to safely work in this environment. And I came to SANS a year ago, and the first week I was here, I was in a meeting where they were talking about the need for this cert, and it seemed like a reunion because I've been in those conversations for so long, and I'm very, very happy to say that a year later, here we are with 155 certified individuals, and all of the individuals who participated from a steering committee to a subject matter expert, item writing, and ultimately down to those individuals who have taken the time to prepare and take the exam should all be applauded for moving this ball forward and just no longer sitting back and admiring the problem and saying, yeah, this is a challenge, this is a difficult nut to crack, and comparing other processes where we've seen it take upwards of 10 years from conversation start to a certification in place. 1 year later, this group of individuals from all sides was able to accomplish great things. So, and now there is a foundation baseline to build more advanced certifications off of that can be more role and responsibility specific. So with that, I'll wait for Q&A.
Very good, Tim. Thanks. And that just to pick on that one point, it's important to understand, this didn't come out of nowhere. This particular certification, is the result of environmental variables, been rising for an awful long time. and it's not the end-all be-all, but it's more an indicator, of the direction we're all going with this. And just wanted to add as well, love doing Carol Burnett, that whole elephant thing, that was classic.
One of my greatest achievements. No doubt.
Debbie, if you want to introduce Mr. Speake, if indeed that's his real name, appreciate that very much. The floor is yours.
Now in a new role as Vice President at NexDefense, Graham Speake brings a wealth of experience, including that which was drawn from his most recent position as the Principal Systems Architect for Yokogawa. He is a highly skilled systems security professional on both process control system security and IT security from the vendors as well as the asset owners' perspectives. Prior to joining Yokogawa, Graham spent 10 years at BP, where he was employed primarily as a security risk manager in the downstream business unit, and 15 years at Atos Origin in various IT and security roles. His ICS career started with designing software for emergency shutdown and fire and gas detection systems. Chris, back to you.
Thank you very much, Debbie. And Graham, if you'd like to do as your peers for a few minutes and give us that inevitable Graham spin on all this, I'd appreciate it, and the floor is yours.
Great, thanks, Chris. I think, like the others, I got involved in this. It was about last February, and was just approached by a couple of people in another end user, and they just said, they were talking about generating this, getting an exam, and getting some base training, and it's what I've been seeing for years, both at BP and Yokogawa, that we needed this basic fundamental training so that we knew that everybody was on the same page and we could talk. And there's so many times I used to go to sites and people had either didn't speak to each other, so the IT people never talked to the process people and vice versa, or if they did, it was quite often the IT people said, this is what you're doing, it's our corporate way, you can't change it. And then quite often you had the process people saying, well, you're not coming here, and there was firewalled off, and nobody got on. And I saw this as a way that, yes, we need this training, that we can get these people to talk to each other, and we need both groups to get together and have a common knowledge and a common set of acronyms even, so that when they say, this is a historian, the IT people know, well, hang on, that's a database. And so they can do that connection, whereas I think both groups were doing their own little bunch of acronyms and trying to protect their turf. I saw this as a great way that we could get everybody together. It would force companies to get their people in the same room and start just chatting about what's going on, and as the first stepping stone of improving the security in the critical infrastructure. And I think it's something we all want. We all want to improve our security, but there hasn't really been a way before this of how to do it. We talked about, well, go and talk to people, go and have some meaningful conversations, but there was no way that you could assess the skills of people in both sides. And I think the course, along with the certification, it just shows people have got a basic understanding both of the IT skills, the IT security skills, but also how they apply to the process control world, and how, the terminology that we use in the process control world. And, we use interchangeably, and I think the people in this industry, we use SCADA, process control, DCS, and we change these terms depending on who we're talking to, but it certainly confuses other people. To get that base knowledge and that baseline where we go, everybody knows this, we can now have the meaningful conversations. And as Tim said, as we then move and get better and higher certifications, we can get skilled people who might be skilled in forensics for industrial control systems, or you're in the ISAC, how we do information sharing properly in the industrial world. And let's start increasing this knowledge, pushing people through these courses and these training and these certifications, so that we can then raise the level of security awareness to make it they're security experts, and then we can all get, in every industry, we can get these relevant people who can then cross-communicate between all the different genres, and actually we can start putting in meaningful security solutions, because quite often a lot of these solutions are out there, but nobody either knows about them, or they're too afraid to put in a security solution, or they don't want to get the IT people involved. So this is certainly a great way. And yeah, I've taught the course. I wrote quite a few of the questions with Tim and other people, and to me, it's just showing how we can all move forward, how we can get that basic knowledge to everybody in this industry. And the number of people I've talked to, both on the course, and I was at a SANS event last night, and everybody's coming up saying, yes, it's something they want. And this is, both in oil and gas, in the electric industry, there are people in the chemical industry. They all want to have something that is common across not just a country or their industry, but on an international scale. And this is, I think, the first one where we can say, we can go to Singapore and teach the course and they can take the cert. I know people have done it from over there. Or we can go to Europe or to the Americas, and it's common. And it's a way that we can look at people across these multinational companies and judge everybody by the same standard. So at that, I'll leave it to questions and see what people are bringing up.
Well said as always, Graham. Thank you very much. So at this point, we're going to move into the open conversation among the panelists. As Debbie said earlier, if you're out in the audience in real time and want to put a question out, there's the chat and the hand raise, and you can throw pencil stubs and so forth, and we'll try to weave you in as well. But picking one of you at random, Tim, I was wondering if you can, a big part of this whole process is dealing with the criticism. It's a very charged topic. I know at the SANS Orlando event in April, there was a great panel on that conversation, and a lot of pointed questions in public forums and so forth. We've seen those. So could you share some of your involvement in this process and the questions and criticisms that have come up and how you've dealt with them so far?
Sure. Yeah. So I think there's many out there, and it's not unique to this effort. I had referenced just the parallel conversations that were happening during the power system operator certification. There was obviously a number of capable professionals performing the job at the time in the power system operator role, and when they saw this certification being developed, they questioned the validity, they questioned the need. Somebody who becomes a NERC certified operator, maybe coming from the outside, they haven't worked in the environment in a generating plant, or they haven't worked in a transit. But as they learned more of what that certification was testing and what it was intended to be, and that there was a full training plan around it. So somebody becomes NERC certified, and then they begin, on-the-job training. They begin working different shifts, is in a monitor role. They have monitor capability within the systems, so they can see and practice and train for upwards of a year before they ever are tested out by a board and validated. So they look through that process, and then they understand that that certification was really meant to be the foundation to begin. And I think that's the same growth that we have to go through with some of the criticism of this certification, that a certification is not a subject matter expert generator. You don't pass the certification and suddenly, like the Matrix, you are a subject matter expert. And any organization that looks to a credential along those lines, that they have it, therefore they must understand our environment and they must be able to come in and perform on day one, is dramatically mistaken. However, they could look at the cert as there is a core level of knowledge that they have, and they've demonstrated it. And from that core level of knowledge, we can layer on our training programs that are specific to our operating environment and specific to our culture, as everybody is unique and different. So a general criticism, and it wouldn't necessarily just be to this cert, it would be in any industry to any credential. Long ago, in the 80s, lots of debate over somebody with experience trained versus a degreed individual coming out of college, and the value plus or minus of either. So this debate is a long-running debate, not unique to this environment, not unique to this certification. But I think people who've been in this field, have been in these environments, they understand that this is a step. This is a necessary step, and it changes the conversation that we've been having for quite some time, that now we have this step and we can use it. Adoption is key, and we can begin building those higher-level certs, and companies can begin building their training programs to reference these industry tools, to reference this cert and say, someone with this, now we will send them down this training path of here's the things they need specific to our operating environment, specific to our safety culture, and specific to the assets that we own and operate. So I think it becomes a key component in organizations' training programs as well. But the only other kind of, so that's how I would respond to that critique. And again, it's not specific to this, but it is a critique that I've heard. The second is industry involvement. And, the bigger we made the steering committee and the bigger we made the subject matter experts and the greater we grew that, the less likely we were to actually achieve something in the time frame that we achieved it. We brought in key representatives from different industries, key stakeholders and key players in this space to achieve what we've achieved. And the key piece that I think is essential for critics that I wasn't involved or I wanted to contribute, the key component is this is a living, breathing cert with new items being written all the time, with evaluations of, at a statistical level of what different certification objectives need to be weighted higher or greater than others based on certification holder feedback and, kind of the analysis of the exam itself based on different geographies and people with English as a second language. There's a whole process that goes behind this, and certainly it's not the certification is built and it's in place and done. It's continuously being, cared for and fed. And there's, as an example, there's 115 questions every single exam, and 15 of those are unstored that are always new items being brought into this certification. So certainly people who want to be involved and want to contribute, the process is never done. They can always get involved and always contribute. Chris, I think those are the two biggest ones that I've heard is I didn't get to play or certifications are, a bad indicator of capability. Thanks.
And yeah, as you say that we're all used to rolling our eyes at certifications. So you're a CISSP, wonderful. With that and a cup of tea, we can have a snack. But you have to start somewhere, right? So the analogy of the medical profession comes up an awful lot in this space. We expect, someone's going to start cutting open our sternums that someone has checked to see if they actually have those skills.
Sure. Yeah, and in our own lives, you don't let a plumber come into your house with some level of certification and some level of, it's become an absolute standard. And in this space, I'm happy to say that with the birth of this certification, we're no longer just admiring the problem and talking about it. We've actually achieved something that we can build from now.
Well, and just follow this out of my mind, in the industrial space, certifications are wall-to-wall and treetop tall. From city and guilds to picket. There's certifications everywhere. I would think much more so than there is in information security. So in this process for you or the other two as well, have the complaints and the criticism and so forth come more from one side or the other in the IT/OT world?
I can respond, but I'd be welcome. Graham, if you want to chime in.
Yeah,
I don't want to control it.
Well, you normally do, Tim.
Mike hogs the hole. Yes.
I will mute.
Yeah, I mean, I think the main criticism that I've heard has all been from mainly security people or people working that sort of the OT security side of the fence rather than the IT people and end users. I mean, end users seem to like it because they're going, at least we've got something, and we've got a starting point where we can go, that is the fundamentals that we want somebody to have. And I think, as Tim sort of said, although the certification is called, it's got the word professional at the end, it really, to me, is not. It doesn't make you the expert. You don't do either the course or get the certification and say, I am now wonderful, I can go anywhere. It's just really as the starting point. When I was recruiting, when I was in BP, yeah, I asked for a CISSP. And that was like, for me, it was like, you've got to have that. I didn't then say when somebody had it, oh, yes, you've got the job. No, you get them in, and then you find out what their experience is, but you can use that as they've at least got some grounding, and they've got the basics, so you don't have to ask them, well, do you know what antivirus is? They know it. So, and it's just getting us up that point. So I think, yeah, a lot of people wanted to become involved in the certification and weren't asked, but yeah, I think it's still available. Yeah, I think it is nice to get different people in there now, and the subject matter experts who were there, perhaps it's time for us to step back and let another group come in and write different questions and more questions and move this exam forward. And, if we need to, yeah, let's get different exams. Let's get a more advanced exam coming up. So I think, I found like the end users and the people who've been on the course, people who've gone through the certification, most of those people seem to think it's a great and it's a good leveler and have really enjoyed it. So yeah, I think a lot of the time people are not understanding what this is trying to do, and they assume it's one thing when it's never meant to be. It's meant just be the fundamentals of IT, OT integration and security in this space, but a very fundamental basic, nothing advanced.
So, Derek, just since your peers here have had a chance to wax and wane on that sort of stuff, anything you want to add to the pros and cons and slings and arrows, of setting this up? And
not really, Chris. I think it's pretty clear it's a challenging thing. And I think that a large number of objective individuals, increasing every day, have been examining and looking at this from a lot of different angles. And is any effort like this going to be perfect? No, but it is a living organism, as early stated. And I think what I've been amazed with is understanding how that organism actually does advance. And it's scientific, and it's measured, and it's a real process-driven. It's now been ANSI accredited, which is a huge achievement, and that actually can't be achieved unless there is a significant process, well documented and proven to be followed. And so I think it is what it is, and it's a great start. And I think everyone can agree that the need is omnipresent, and how to address it and and how to do it is always thorny. So I think its glass is more than half full versus being half empty is certainly my disposition.
Yeah, thanks. And I'll add my own praise for it. It's really aside from any of the content. And I've said the same sort of thing I've said it about the GICSP, and I've said it about the NIST cybersecurity framework. There's a lot of value in the fact of it. Aside from the content. Is the NIST framework good, bad, otherwise? It's a great conversation. Same with the GICSP. But the reality is that by taking a given step in a very public fashion, as there are artifacts in solution around all of this, we tend to get things to precipitate out. So aside from, I'm not saying there's anything bad about GICSP, but I think all of that aside, I think it's very important that we as an industry took this step and said, look, this is a real thing. You can actually go and get certified in it, and it's not, and there are people signing up for it. And I shared that link. I think, Derek, it was you sent. Anybody, it's in the chat, and we can email it if nobody can find it out there to the certified professionals. But we made it a real thing. A question from Frank out in the audience says, certifications are/need to be perishable. How can you not just get certification but maintain certification? Don't build certs that can't be sustained. So if one of you feel like speaking about the sort of future of the process and that issue of keeping both the process itself fresh, as well as the people who are certified. You know, I went to the course 15 years ago and never did anything with it, got a certification, so now I'm still a certified professional. And
sure. So, like most certifications, I have held and continue to hold many, but the some of them have kind of the annual renewals, and others have a one-time uplift renew at the end of your term, where your certification does in fact expire, and you either have to demonstrate that you've had continuing education and continuing involvement that aligns with the certification, or you simply have to retake the exam and demonstrate that you still have the ability to pass the certification attempt as it's gone through its updates and as it's gone through its care and feeding from year to year to year while you were a certification holder. The GICSP is no different than any of that. It has a term where you must retake or demonstrate continuing education hours that satisfy the requirements from GIAC.
Great.
So yeah, there's many industry certifications that are exactly like that. They all vary based on payment structure and renewal. Whether you have to pay every single year to maintain, or whether you have to at the end true up with continuing education hours and demonstrate, or if you simply retake the exam. That's kind of the variation throughout the industry. I'm not too familiar with many certifications anymore that don't require that continuing education requirement or a exam retake at some expiration date.
And that speaks to the, as Derek said a moment ago, the ANSI accreditation of the certification and so forth. And I guess just to follow on that thought, one you wanted to just talk for a moment about the process. I know at the SANS April event, there was a good conversation about how it was put together, and the scientific method, for lack of a better word. So Graham, I think it was you on the panel back then that said that very well. So just to, I guess, round out that topic, how was this peer reviewed, and what is the kind of structure to keep it fresh going forward?
Yeah, I mean, I've been involved in question writing with a couple of companies, and by far this was the most rigorous. And I think there were quite a few of us who turned up, and our impression was just going to be, you get into a room and we knock out 50, 100 questions in that day and then leave. And the GIAC people came and they started giving presentations and giving us the rules, and you could see everybody sort of looking around going, this is going to be a lot harder than it was. And they were taking into account things like English is not somebody's first language. So there was whole lists of words you couldn't use or phrases you couldn't use. So they don't like you put in like a negative in a sentence. So you can't put a question like, what is not the right answer? Because somebody with a second language will look at that and look at what is the right answer, and ignore the not bit. So we had to write them in a particular way. There were then a lot of psychometrics going on afterwards. So once you'd looked at written the question, you had to submit it. It got peer reviewed 3 or 4 times. So, and every time, somebody would look at it, send it back to you if they didn't like something. It wasn't clear. So, it wasn't clear to somebody who didn't know the subject. Could they understand what you were asking? So the process, just to tell us what the process was, probably took a half to 3/4 of a day. And then we started writing the questions. And it was very clear as soon as we started submitting questions and getting them bounced back, what we had to do, and we had to make these that were fair and reasonable, and we're still looking at the goal. And the goal, obviously, is always, what are the fundamentals that you need for this space? So we couldn't ask some very tricky question. It wasn't like, what is the switch for Nessus if you're going to do this sort of scan in this sort of environment? No, you wouldn't know that every day. You'd look it up. So what do you need to know every day? So it might be, well, perhaps you should know what the port of Modbus is, or you need to know what a firewall is, or antivirus, or whitelisting, but not on how would you install McAfee antivirus. That is too much depth and too specific. So it was a long process, but it then we understood, and we started writing questions for the fundamentals of this subject, and that's what we always had to come back. Should somebody who is working in the space, who has had a few years experience, but is not a 30-year expert, would they or should they know that kind of content? And that's what we always went back to. And I know, and as I said at the panel when I was there in Orlando, I think just for everybody who was writing the question, we hadn't seen the course. So the course wasn't a prerequisite for writing the questions at that time. It was just we were writing questions that we thought should have been put in the course, and the two were done differently. So, you know, somebody with, you know, like yourself, Chris, you could probably sit the exam. You wouldn't need to go through the course because you have had enough experience in this space that you should know what the questions are and what the right answer is.
Well said. So and it fits into the last little bit we have here, and unless there's any other questions come up, I'm interested in the conversation on where this particular certification, this effort in putting the certification together, fits into this ongoing, this continuous stream of workforce development. You know that we've had our first Interrupt session, which is a program for high school students to interest them in this area. We did that at Worcester Polytech in May. We're doing another one at Georgia Tech at the conference in September. And as we look at that, we're sort of, those two as examples, and there's others. You're bracketing this whole issue, from if you're not in a career at all, not even in college, what do we do, to get people experience, to get them interested, to validate they actually know what they're talking about, from public school through retirement. A lot of people, I think would be qualified and the appropriate kind of folks, to take a GICSP or kind of those old farts like us, right, who've got a lot of experience already. And as Tyler Williams said, can at least sit in the middle and have that conversation. And his comments, I think, were perfect on that other panel. That his two best people failed it because they were one side of the other, specialty, but they learned something, and they were able to at least have that take that center of the conversation and bring the right people together and make sure that everything's covered. But going forward, we have to have, it seems quite clear, well, we certainly, incontrovertible, we have to have workforce development pervasively throughout the entire system, from at least the beginning of high school, through a variety of college classes into various professional developments and certifications along the way. So, Tim, since these guys have, I think, sort of, and Lord knows me, probably consumed a lot of the oxygen for the last few minutes, you want to share some thoughts on how you see this particular certification fitting into that, broader expansion of certification and workforce development over time?
Yep. Yeah, for sure. The couple of things. So we could probably have a whole other call on this, and I imagine at some point in time through the ISAC, you guys are perfectly positioned to do just that. I've had the opportunity to work on, through Department of Energy and PNNL, a secure power system professional project. I'm the chair of that effort. We're just wrapping up phase 3, and we've looked a lot at what are the job tasks, so that the JTA, the job task analysis, what do the people in these roles actually perform? So going through and looking at full job task analysis and analyzing the tasks that they perform in their jobs, then mapping that over to the different roles and responsibilities and groupings of them, and then looking at, of these groups and of these job tasks, what existing certifications are in place, what existing training programs are in place, what existing frameworks exist. And in phase 2, we kind of looked at the ESC2M2, which now They have so the electric sector cybersecurity capability and maturity model. They've mapped that to non-electric sector specific, so just the C2M2 and the NICE framework. We looked at those, and those different frameworks have workforce management and workforce development components to them. So looking through all of those, they look to credentialing and they look to continuing ed and training environments. I took all of the efforts that we've been going through in this workforce development and looked at it from a life cycle perspective for an organization. Because ultimately the asset owners and operators are the ones that have to face this challenge, whether individuals or people in, at an individual level don't feel the value of a credential or don't feel the value of traditional curriculum training. The organizations themselves have to look at that risk and manage it every day. And I kind of looked at it from the very beginning, where first you have to fund different positions. So you have a funding challenge, then you have a finding challenge. How are you going to find qualified individuals for a position? And that includes certifications, credentials, job experience, your culture, how they're going to fit within a group. So finding that right person and selecting them, hiring them, training, and retaining them. So this whole kind of life cycle. And again, if you do the funding, finding, selecting, hiring, and training well, but you don't retain them, you're continuously going to be going back to the very beginning where you've got to find new. So I think the certification and the training programs are key components, that can be mapped throughout that entire life cycle. The certification piece helps in the finding and the selecting. The training component obviously is key to lay out the job tasks that an individual does and mapping that to their training program, which may include certifications to validate completion of a training step before they can move on to the next. And then obviously an employee who's getting trained and building their credentials, you're offering incentives to retain them because you're investing in their career and in their development directly. So I think a lot of the things that we as a group have worked on from a credentialing and a training maps very well to the overwhelming workforce challenges that exist throughout industrial control system in all sectors, not just electric.
Well said. Go right ahead.
No, I wanted to make sure I answered your question somewhere in there.
Probably did. As you say, there's a lot of conversation to go around this, and it's I see it as again, GICSP, good, bad, otherwise, that's important, but it's not really important. What's really important is we made a step, because Lord knows we're not going to get bored in addressing this issue anytime soon. And you can always come back and revisit and retune and say, well, that first step was right, wrong, better, taller, greener.
Right.
But
for sure, the days are over where we're looking at another industry or another different panel or another working group coming together and saying, how do we fix the we can't find the right individuals for a job? And as somebody's not muted.
Derek.
Derek.
Or Tim.
Can you mute him?
I'm muted.
Oh, okay. Well, not on my end.
I'll take the blame. Fine.
The days are over of getting a group together and looking at the problem and saying, what is out there, what university programs, what credentials, what certifications are out there that will align as a starting point for our jobs, and the answer being none. There's been many efforts over time that have gone down that path, and with the GICSP, the answer is not none anymore.
Yeah, I think, again, we're quite often finding it hard to get people into the industrial IT world, but we can get them into the IT world. So perhaps this will give us a way that we can say, those people who have gone down that standard IT track, it's a way that we can start giving some of this base fundamental knowledge and get them interested in ICS, and then we can train them more. And but this will be a good first step to prove they at least got the fundamentals across both genres.
Yeah, to follow up on that, we found that through our hiring and our career fairs and a number of things. Many people are interested in the what they perceive as the fun and sexy, cybersecurity environment where they get to be the sniper up on the hill and, taking out targets. In this environment, people look at electric sector or many of the other sectors as if, if Thomas Edison came out of his grave, it would look exactly the same to him. They don't understand the reliance on control systems and IT and cyber and how much it is integrated across all of those environments. And, this is one of the most exciting fields to be in currently. So providing that level of education, and then the bridge, as Graham said, to take people who have IT background and bridge them over to this side so they understand the language and they have foundation, and an organization has some level of comfort in moving them into a role where they can begin to learn more about a specific operation or a specific environment.
Yeah, and I think it was something you said, Graham, that sparked me on this one. So, certifications, we know lots of folks like this who are certification hounds, right? Just absolutely love getting that done. And as a parent with kids, 2 teenagers and 1 younger, I see a lot of value in giving something concrete to people. So, here's something you can go for that. And with all the thought we've put into interrupt recently, teenagers, high schools could, how do we move them forward and putting that process together? So much of it comes down to the psychology of motivation. It's not, we think, okay, we need to teach them how to, split atoms or, set up a PGP key. It's like, that's not really it. Quite often we need to motivate people, and different groups and demographics that works in different ways. But, having a certification, it could attract people. It's like, oh, there's something I can get that allow me to get that job interview to get in the door. And maybe I should knock that out. And along the way, you get to that, that sniper on the hill sort of thing. This is intrinsically interesting stuff. It's just more likely to have a fascinating coffee conversation than if you're a web developer.
Yeah, and
right.
I've talked a few times at universities, just done like a guest lecture to the IT world, and it's amazing how many people at the end of it go, I didn't know they really use that much IT in a control system. And it's like, it just sparks that interest. And I think if we can push this forward, even, I'm not saying that we get into university, but at least if people can see it, it's another avenue they might look at and go, well, perhaps I can look at this. What is this IT? What is this industrial control system? And if you can just start getting, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5% of people switching over into our world, that is going to make the world a difference. And, they're going to be with a different mindset, and that'd be the younger people coming into this industry, which we need, because the rest of us are all old and about to retire, apart from Tim.
I'm ready to retire, Graham. I may not be old.
Well, I joke about Carol Burnett, but I remember you in McHale's Navy, so you must be getting up there.
Wow.
I thought we were making fun of the brick today.
They have enough problems already. It doesn't seem fair.
It's too easy.
Oh, so we've got our last few minutes left. Any particular topics that are thoughts that you guys want to throw out there that haven't been there already before I fire arbitrary questions and instigation at you?
A couple of items, and I can cover it in 10 seconds. Some of the facts that are almost always asked throughout conferences, environments, and other items. The test is 115 questions long. 100 of them are scored. It is open book, not open internet, so you can bring print material into the testing center with you. You get 3 hours for the exam, and you are provided 2 practice tests. The testing centers are through Pearson VUE, so they're all over the globe, and you have to renew every 4 years through a retake or a certification maintenance unit audit from GICS. But those are the most common questions that are asked, so I wanted to provide them in response.
So the other specific points on there. So what does it cost? Where do they go? How much effort does it take? What do you need to know before you should consider taking it?
So the link that you sent out should contain the GICSP website, which lists all of the certification objectives. I would go through all of the certification objectives and gain an understanding of where you are personally. And then after you register, so the cost differs whether you're taking a course, you get a discounted rate, or if you just challenge it directly. So obviously it would be total all-in cost would be cheaper if you're at a skill level where you can challenge it directly. You wouldn't have the cost of a supporting course. It's not just the SANS course that leads into this from a discount perspective. You can also get a discount from a number of the other hosted courses that we do work with. Full details on that can be, obtained through GIAC directly. But from a process of how you would take it, I would recommend and have recommended to the students that either after a course or if you're going to challenge it directly, I would take your first practice exam with no books, no material, no anything. Go through the practice exam and let your performance dictate kind of where you need to focus more and be more prepared. Spend some time through your study materials and your body of knowledge or through the books that you've obtained through a course. And after you've kind of studied and spent some time preparing, take it again to your second time as a practice test with your open book environment the same way you would in the actual exam. Because many people need to learn, even from that perspective, that when they have open books available, it helps them on a particular question possibly, but they may spend far too much time on a particular question that now they never get to other questions that they could perform well on. So you need to practice both ways, I believe. And I would start with the no books first and then move to using your books and material when you need in your second practice exam. When you're prepared, again, the Pearson VUE, they have almost 3,500 testing centers globally. So you sign up, register through there. If you take a course, all of this material is provided to you in regards to the process. If you challenge the certification directly, I would simply just go to the GICSP page and register to take the exam. But still, I would follow the practice test model that I've described, just to help prepare you for the environment that you're going to be going into and to help prepare you for the certification objectives where you may need more focus.
Awesome. Thank you, Tim. Derek, do you have a 30, 60 seconds you want to add on the way out?
No, I think we've covered this has been a real pleasure, and I'm glad to be invited to be part of it, and I think we're making real progress. I mean, like we were all talking a little bit before this started today. There seems to be a lot of things in the wind right now, not just obviously for the certification, but a lot of initiatives that do look like real progress.
Yeah, I agree. That's could have perhaps done this certification 8 or 10 years ago, but nobody would have hired you for having it, and that's I think it's a very different world now. So, Graham, are you capable of saying anything in 30 seconds? Would you like to throw it out there on the way out?
For me, I think this is just the beginning, and I think nobody should think of this as the end game. We need to start somewhere. This is the start, and let's all get together and actually stop the bickering and stop, criticizing things. Let's work together and try to make this the start of something really big.
I couldn't agree more. And in fact, walking away from the bickering, at a certain point, if you insist on just complaining, you'll end up doing it by yourself.
Yep.
So thank you very much for all three of you guys for being here, for everybody who showed up in person. And again, if in fact we have a future, those people listening to it out there. See you next time. And Debbie, if you would like to dance us out of here, thank you very much too.
To our distinguished panelists, thank you so much for your thoughts and insights you've shared on today's call. And to our audience, on behalf of all of us at the ICS ISAC, we appreciate your joining us today. We hope that you found the information of value and something that you can take to further enhance your organization's cybersecurity posture. Our next public briefing will be held Wednesday, August 20th, and feature a panel of distinguished subject matter experts discussing the NIST cybersecurity framework at 6 months. Other sessions will be announced in our monthly updates, on the Center's website, and in our other communication vehicles. As a reminder, a recording of this session will be available on the ICS ISAC Briefing Archive page. Thank you again for your participation on today's call.